Hello everybody, and welcome to the final boss fight video of the series. This time we're tackling the mysterious stranger, who is one of the many people running around Kingdom Hearts land in just a black robe, completely concealed, so we don't really know who they are. As you can see by the top of the video, the title, already spoiled that. It's Roxas, everybody. It's one of his unfortunately few appearances. If you've seen the review about 358 over 2 days, where he was the main character, you will know that I have a distinct and incredible fondness for Roxas. His backstory, his character arc is the best of all the protagonists and pretty much all the characters of the entire series, especially when you pit him up against Sora here. He's a tragic figure, a lot of backstory, a lot of emotion behind it, which is kind of weird for what you'd usually expect from Kingdom Hearts. And as you'll see from the footage here, editing this was a real bastard, because just like what we did with Dust Flyer in the 358 series, I basically did this entire boss fight off of save states. Just like tradition, Roxas is brutally hard. He is the extra scenario final battle, which means that Square Enix is going to throw all the cards on the table. And even though Roxas only has 4.5 health bars, like I said, he is an incredible bastard to deal with. You really need to be on, well, not really on your A game, because I'm sure if you people out there figured out how to get Kira and Kiraga, this wouldn't have been such a problem. But for me, who didn't really care to understand the stupidly obtuse gameplay upgrade system, and there's my ass getting handed straight back to me, because Roxas' attacks are pretty frickin' brutal. He has the good spell, the spell he's just launching right now. I don't know what it's called. It might be tied to his Ragnarok skill, which I know is pretty much his cornerstone, his big unique attack, so that might be that. I know he uses it in a couple of his other fights, probably especially his data fights in Kingdom Hearts 2 and 3, which was, you know, kindly enough of Square Enix to provide to the fans as part of its DLC, which is, as you can imagine, pretty freaking lame, Square Enix. But then again, I'm sure that the data fights probably equally had some bullshit attached to them in Kingdom Hearts 2, where they were attached to the final mix re-release. Which, you know, I'll give more credit to Kingdom Hearts 2. When it re-released its final mix, at least it felt like it was extra content that you were getting at, you know, a pretty decent price, because Kingdom Hearts 2 is a fantastic game. It's getting ported to the PS3 or the PS4, so it's just, it feels like much more of a good deal, rather than Square Enix tying the data fights of Organization 13 to the $30 frickin' DLC pack. Like, what the actual fuck was that? I actually paid for the Remind DLC that we will be talking about during the Kingdom Hearts 3 series, and I'm definitely not happy about it. $30 is quite the ask for story-based video game DLC. The only other DLC I paid for that was on that level was the incredibly fantastic Assassin's Creed 3 Tyranny of King Washington, which was amazing. It actually felt like a legit game. It was about 7 hours long if you played the entire thing. You know, in the past, I've definitely paid more than my fair share for DLC. I've definitely paid $30 plus in total for DLC, but DLC one at a time, $30. And even then, you could definitely consider the Tyranny of King Washington to be 3 packs, because it was released in thirds back on the Xbox 360. Back in the day when, you know, legitimate full content would be downloadable in like under 2 gigs, and nowadays it's probably more like 20 to 60, how far we've come. Or how far we've devolved as time went on. Sorry I'm not talking about the boss fight very much, it's just, the combat is pretty typical for these late-stage boss fights. The extra boss fight with the will of I've forgotten his name. Oh, the Will of Terra, that was it. Sorry. I really haven't thought about that boss fight, because I did try to attempt it while I was playing Kingdom Hearts 2. I think I got about 20 seconds into it before I died in 5 seconds to his first attack, so I wasn't interested. But is that typical sort of thing where they're throwing out these ridiculously lengthy combo Keyblade attacks, which just wreck your shit, or incredibly huge AoE attacks that are just a pain and a half to deal with. It's the typical shit that they do with this series. I find it very annoying, but considering that I'm emulating this on Desmume, I definitely can just say that I'm just gonna get through save states and, you know, just fuck it. I don't really care, because doing this all in one go is going to be incredibly difficult, and I felt, for whatever reason, I wanted to see recoded through to the very end. So that's what I did. Cause, fuck this guy, he's got an attack that'll chop off a third of my goddamn health bar in one go. And I can't do anything about it because it involves me getting knocked into the sky. I mean, I'm sure the answer to a lot of this is just learn the parry timings, idiot, but parry timings in Kingdom Hearts has never been an exact science. I mostly just default to trying to button mash through attacks and hoping that I hit some parries, but as you can see, easier said than done, especially for extra game bosses. I mean, if you want to know how pathetic I am, I didn't even do the frickin' Ice Titan from the original Kingdom Hearts, I believe, which was one of the extra final mix bosses. I didn't even do that one, because even as simplistic as that boss fight was, it was still really annoying to finish up. I hope that you guys do appreciate my editing on this. I think I edited out around 15 save states on this one. This one was, like I said, an incredible labor. I did eventually get through it, but like you see, it's like pulling teeth, because you don't have a lot of time to get into Roxas to get in attacks. You can get maybe one combo in before the typical thing that they do, where they just break out of the combo that you're doing. Like you have some sort of invisible goddamn stamina bar, like some sort of bullshit Dark Souls ripoff that doesn't know what it's damn well doing. It's that sort of thing. Like, even if you have the best combat mind in whatever, in the world, I think that even then, if you play your cards perfectly correctly, you're still gonna have that situation where you end up just killing him over and over with your great freaking potential. I don't know how I got those Bs completely mixed up. I probably was just stressed out of my goddamn mind with all the goddamn saving. Oh, and then he does this, which is just complete horseshit. Like, I'm not even gonna pull a punch on that one. That attack is completely bullshit. Like, random firing AoE attacks that hit like 15 times. There's no way around it. That's complete horseshit. But even though, I mean, I'm knocking the boss fight, but I'm never gonna knock Roxas the character. Like, his appearance here doesn't really make all that much sense because it's tied into Roxas also being a data clone of himself. Okay, so that's how you dodge Ragnarok. You just dodge to the side. I'm glad that I learned that, I guess. Now I can dodge one of his 4 attacks. Isn't that completely amazing? Thanks, Roxas. But yeah, I'm never gonna knock Roxas the character, because his journey from Kingdom Hearts 2, which, amazingly, Kingdom Hearts 2 was released before 358, so all that stuff in 358, they basically just pulled out of their ass, because Roxas in that game only appeared for probably a combined 2 hours of probably a 25 to a 30-hour game. So I think it is really amazing that they just let the creators run loose with that game and just kind of do whatever they wanted, and they ended up making one of the best stories that Kingdom Hearts has ever seen. It definitely kicks the ass of most of the main games, just because Roxas is an infinitely better protagonist than Sora, because Sora is just the boring Destiny child where all of his powers, all of his greatness has just been handed to him, whereas Roxas is, you know, he's part of Sora, so he inherently has a lot of abilities. That's why he became a part of Organization 13 anyway, was because he had the power of the Keyblade, and he could release hearts to join into Kingdom Hearts, which was the ultimate point of him being there. But it really does feel like a lot of what Roxas is able to do, he had to really work for. And he was always the underdog, which is always good for a story. I'm sure that you can parry that if you can break out of being stunned, I guess, but it definitely just seems like if you get hit into the sky, you're going to take a guaranteed hit, which is a huge chunk of your health, and not fun. But anyway, this theme, Roxas' sad theme, definitely one of the most iconic music tracks in Kingdom Hearts 2. I'm pretty sure it did make an appearance in 358 over 2 days, but it's definitely something he had to work for. Like, he had trials and tribulations that he had to go through, whereas Sora here is just a really lazy protagonist, where everyone he goes, everywhere he meets, he just makes instant friends with everybody, and the only adversity that he faces is with the 100% evil guys. Whereas Roxas, having been come from and raised up by Organization 13, has that moral ambiguity that works really well for him, because he was on the side that was ultimately evil, but he never saw them actually do something evil until they turned on him and the people that he knew. And the fact that he was a nobody really made it very substantial that he ended up learning something like friendship and making friends while he was working there. And it truly was something, especially if you're, you know, coming off of the main series and, you know, want to take your fandom a little further and want to get into the side stuff. I definitely highly recommend getting into 358, because I know the gameplay is pretty shitty and it looks like garbage, but it really does have something to say if you're willing to give it a chance and say that it is a DS game. There's only so much that they could do with the graphics. And I am really sorry that this video ended up just being a secondary recommendation for 358, because Recoded is so goddamn boring that I really can't talk about it. I'll talk about it in the final cutscene. We're finally getting down to the final health bar, because they do try to do a little bit more in the extra scenario to kind of give it a bit more pathos, a bit more weight. It does a little bit better than Recoded's main scenario, but it doesn't really do enough to make it a standout, especially since a lot of what it does is completely forgotten after the game's credits and isn't brought up again. Even these events, I mean, like I said, this is a clone of Data Roxas, and the data clones get deleted after the entire scenario of this game is finished because they're no longer needed. So this isn't going to come up later. This is completely self-contained. So if the story is shitty, like it is, then there's no point in remembering it, and all the things that they do to set up is completely pointless. Whereas if it was a good story, it probably could have been integrated in a small way into the future stuff. But instead, it's so bad that the series itself seems to want to forget that it happened in the first place. Which again is a real shame, because there is so much that you can do with Roxas' character arc. The fact that they went through so much tragedy and has actual emotional connections to the people that he knows. And thankfully, in a small way, as you can see, that freaking status ailment, I kind of forgot what it does. I thought it limited our jumps, but I think it limits our command use ability, I'm not sure. But I do remember that being annoying, I just can't remember what it was. But like I said, it's kind of a shame they couldn't do more in this section, because there's so much that you can do with Roxas. He has actual emotions behind him, because his character arc actually... Oh, really? You're just comboing into a second version of that? That's fucking fantastic, and I think the lasers are actually bigger, which is just even more fun. Like, I would put more extra bosses in my series of videos, but my personal policy on it is that if I have to work at doing the extra scenarios and, you know, grind through attempts to make it happen, I'm not going to do them, because I don't really want to do extra bosses as work. I feel that it's stupid completionism, and I think that if you're going to do extra bosses, you might as well balance them for people being immediately done with the game, instead of making them grind another 30 levels just to have a decent chance at finishing up. If I'm going to grind for 30 levels, I better get a guaranteed win after that, but from what I heard, with Square Enix extra bosses, you can't even get that sort of guarantee, which I think is complete bullshit, which is why I never do them. Square Enix is a huge fan of this. A lot of developers don't really do it anymore. it's not really a huge thing to put in extra content. But then again, we're talking about this game, and I think this game came out in like 2007, 2008. Like, this is an old title, and it definitely shows. Because, god damn it, they did not do anything in development to mitigate how shitty it looks. Like, even then, I think they could have gone with a chibi game, and it would have worked infinitely better. Because the DS cannot handle games with realistic character models. It just looks like absolute crap. So yeah, thankfully we're finally almost done. I got full health. Roxas isn't blasting his bullshit all over the place. Although, like they always say, don't get greedy because they could just instantly turn it on you. It's just real frickin' annoying, and I still haven't learned how to frickin' dodge that. Because why do you need to learn how to do any of this when you got fucking save states? But yeah, I mean, Roxas is, you know, for the people who played 358, I think that you got one heck of a deal over the rest of the fandom. Like, you got to experience something truly special in that story. Whereas the main series games, just for how good they are and how fun they are to as hack and slash games, they can definitely feel like they're just going through the motions. And now we're getting to the real reason we ended up going through Castle Oblivion. And that's basically because Roxas was trying to prepare Datasora here to understand the message of the game, the coded message about the people that he's supposed to find who are going through intense sorrow, and kind of learning about his personal connection to them. But I don't think all of this really works because this revelation again is being had by Datasora. This is just all a mission to figure out what the message means. And so, again, they can try and do pathos all they want, but again, this is a character that's completely self-contained in the story, so if it's not incredibly momentous and really substantial, then it ultimately doesn't matter. But I guess it does add a weight because it's an interesting twist on what they were trying to do. And that basically just wraps us up to the ending where we get our final explanation. Unfortunately, we're not going to see that until the main review. So, this is the end of the video, and I hope you guys have a fun time. Thanks for sticking around.